Wow, how cool is this to present in an opera house, right? But I have to start with the bad news, right? I was planning to sing the low-code, no-code aria duet, but my Neptune co-singer bailed out, and the next challenge is, you can hear from my voice, it doesn't sound that good all the time, so I'm losing my voice. So I need someone in the audience who's my voice coach, that when my voice gets too bad, to pick up this cup of water and throw in some water on my voice. Otherwise, we won't finish this, I promise you. Feels like a TED Talk, right? Only in yellow, right? Okay. How low-code enables the best practice of the 21st century. Super important. But let's face it first, we're in the age of disruption. Things have never changed at the current rate how they're changing. Anybody thinks their business is slowing down? I'm on this quest worldwide to figure out which industry is slowing down. I'm not sure if I want to work in that industry, but I would love to know about it, just in case I want to slow down, right? And what is really happening is, something you're really familiar with is, that business best practices have to get better every year, right? Everybody has to move faster, be more efficient, and what has always been the case, and that's what we're comfortable with, is that technology capabilities were always behind. It was always a compromise. Right? The battery wouldn't last long enough. Actually, we haven't figured that out. The batteries don't last long enough still today, right? But the UX would be a compromise. The performance would be a compromise. The availability of the system was a compromise. The trusted technologist would translate the business requirement into a system that would run as good as you could. Something super interesting happened, depending on the technology where you pinpoint that, in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, where technology capability, you see the breakthrough, passed for the first time technology business requirements. Technology can do more than what business wants. And that creates a void. Yeah, there's 4 phase, legacy phase, everybody knows how to work there. Many of you are SAP customers. Thousands of people can size an SAP system to the right size of what is needed. There's an inflection point, which we see for some things, we'll talk about this. Then there's an opportunity. Anybody has heard about digital disruption? Right? So that's what's happening. And then I think there will be a catch-up phase where you can go to the University of Oslo and say, I want to have the How Do I Run My Business in 21st Century course, and the professors will have published that. Now this is the background, right? And who likes physics? I'm not good at physics, but I do pseudo-physics, right? V for velocity, right? The speed of your enterprise must be faster than your markets. But it doesn't mean you have to run at all time at full speed, but if you slow at adopting what's happening in your market, you could be easily in bad situations, right? So you want to be in the comfortable situation like this gentleman at the famous French lighthouse who knows the waves are crashing in, this lighthouse is stable enough, right? You have to make sure that your speed is faster. And there's many aspects to speed, right? We're just learning painfully about supply chain speed, supply chains being a major issue. We know about human speed, one of my favorites, right? I will never be able to run 100 meters fast, I just don't have the body for that. Yeah, so there's limits to human speed, what humans can do, and we often forget how hard it is for humans to adopt to technology. One of the major challenges there. Boardroom speed, right? Analysis paralysis, very real. Boardrooms making decisions too slow, decision velocity being too slow to make the right decisions for an enterprise. System speed, right? We heard before from Elcor, pronounced right? How important, how much time they spent on scaling their applications, right? Because nothing is worse for an online retailer than not being able to scale when there's a Black Friday or whatever retail event. And it all starts at the beginning. And the beginning is really, I'm quoting famous Silicon Valley venture capitalists, right? Mark Andreessen. He wrote this essay about software is eating the world, right? Software is becoming the changing factor in enterprises, how to work faster, how to work better, how to become more efficient, and even most importantly, become more effective. The big challenge is we don't know how best practice will run in the 21st century. Yeah, because something has happened, we'll talk about this in a moment, that has made computing from the finite world, which you're talking legacy phase, to infinite. Computing has become infinite. So it has fundamentally changed, right? It used to be your software vendor, your enterprise software vendor, your standard software vendor was the king, would knight you and saying, good job implementing your system as we thought about it. Very feudal, very built up in that way that you had to use what your software vendor provided you. You tried to stay away from customization because it would break your upgrade cycles. You didn't want to do that. And how it is today, right? Yes, it jumped from the medieval times to maybe spaceships, right? But every enterprise works for themselves. Yeah, they're kind of connected, but they have to figure out how fast they move, how they steer to move forward towards the business goal. Which translates into something, I mean, Norway is also an energy country, right? How good are your platforms? Right? The platforms that you're on determine what you can do, where you will go, right? And betting on the wrong platform can be crucial or critical, right? Or betting on the right one can be crucial, so you have the right capabilities to have in the right place. So your platform decision, right? There was a question also with the Elk shop customer, right? So he navigated very diplomatically, but you also don't have to be afraid to switch platforms, right? If you notice, we stuck one, we started with one, we started good, something changed, the vendor's not moving. The platform capabilities and the platform speed is super critical. And then, of course, coding speed matters, right? You later from a colleague of mine from Redmond, he's much more closer to developers than me, so I don't want to raise expectations for him, but I'd love to hear his talk later. Developers are limited in terms of quantities, right? For whatever reason, there's only 30 plus million developers since the 90s when I looked at this number first. I don't know, every year supposedly 500,000 developers join the Indian market. I don't know where the other 500,000 go away. But what I know is my uncle, who retired proudly at 55, was a COBOL developer, and he was 10 years in retirement. And now, at 75, he makes more money working 4 days a week than he did working full-time 20 years ago. And he loves that he gets calls on the weekend and say, oh, we have a COBOL program that's failing. And and it's failing actually Sunday. Can you come in and fix it? So at 75, he loves the rush of adrenaline of doing this and fixing old COBOL programs. So anybody wants to learn COBOL, there's a temporary market out there because the world runs on COBOL. Right? So coding speed really, really matters. From the idea, business sees something, to implementing it. Right? And we're here because it can't be done by the so-called full code developers exclusively. But let's talk to what is the technology driver behind this. And who did I appoint to tell me to drink? And I call this concept infinite computing. Yeah, and infinite computing is, for the first time, typical computing resources of connectivity, networking, storage, and compute have become practically unlimited. Now, as technologists, we know there's a limit to Azure, and there's a limit to AWS, but probably they don't even know themselves where that limit is right now. And there's 5 layers to it. One of the layers, the bottom layer, we're super familiar with. Right? Nobody does not expect that you can do a video call on Zoom or on Teams or on your phone with anybody in the world at any given moment. Right? If you think back 10 years ago, 20 years ago for sure, unthinkable. Right? To connect with other people was unthinkable at the time, so the internet changed that. The next layer is infinite insights, something at the cusp which is not really yet an enterprise yet as it should be. And that's the revolution around Hadoop-style technologies, where for the first time companies could store any kind of digital information that they wanted to without knowing what questions to ask. Right? You know, the use case came from the advertising industry. If Matthias for Neptune is placing an online ad to come to Neptune Impact, and he wants to select all Scandinavian IT managers of companies over a certain level of revenue based in that region, who have also Googled competitor names and so on. That search at Google, if he wants to place with Google, does not exist. But they have all the search history, usage history to search for. And the critical part in advertising that Hadoop solved is that that person at Google, in that case, or Facebook or Yahoo, who invented it originally, would say, okay, we'll charge you so much per click. And that propelled this capability, which is now available for enterprise since 5-10 years, that you can store everything that's electronically available, where the classic thinking is, tell me what question you want to have in the business. And that will limit your data sources. What will it mean for your decision speed? What will it mean for your decision quality? Not a good thing if the information is missing. What was the technology we used from the finite computing area? Where would you go for lots of data coming together to your data warehouse, right? And we all know when the data warehouse missed information, didn't have that information, if you're lucky, 2-3 days. Often it was structural, 2-3 months to get that information, right? So it's infinite insights. Compute has become so cheap. Cheaper than ever before. You don't have to buy the compute machine. That enables you to ask all these questions on top of infinite insights. Right? There's a combination of being able to store everything at a cheap way, don't even think about which information you want and don't want, and then run the compute for all possible questions on top of that. And that will enable, where we're not yet, infinite machine learning. Right? You will be able to see the consequence, staying with our customers. No, we only had Elk Shop, right? So raising a promotion for a certain product, 2-3 days later I see what happens in revenue. Maybe that's a good idea to do that again, or do that in different geography, right? That's what infinite machine learning will do. And then ultimately, I think in the second half of this decade, we'll see deep learning, where software is looking over your shoulders and figures out what you're doing. Very scary, potentially, right? But also very welcome, because who wants to do routine tasks? Usually nobody. So that's infinite computing. And what are the keys to transform your enterprise? There's 9 strategies, right? Infinite insights. You must have a Hadoop big data strategy, call it lakehouse, data lake, whatever you want. You must get the information of your enterprise together to look into that. Right? You need to empower the edge. Right? You can no longer update systems which have been on DOS or Windows 2.1 or something at that place. Big data we talked about. Obviously, you need to go to the cloud, because the cloud, other people call elasticity, I call the infinite compute, gives you these infinite capabilities. Low and no code, this is why we're here, obviously. Then you build next generation applications which take advantage of that. Right? They're based in the cloud, they use part of big data capabilities, they use artificial intelligence or machine learning and make it better. And there is this AI opportunity for those of you who early are on big data clusters, which enable then, what's the most important thing, that the business model of your enterprise that you're operating becomes more agile. Right? Many of you are developers, you know all the beauties and advantages of agile programming. The same thing should come to the business model of an enterprise. And then ultimately you want to have resilience in your enterprise, something talked about a lot. I introduced you to infinite insights already, right? So you're pretty much comfortable with that. Super important strategy for your enterprise. Yeah, the edge, super relevant again, as a data source, but also as an automation aspect. Right? And then comes back to software. I would like to run the same software code assets, valuable software, which has been built by blood, sweat, and tears, and has been tested and running on the enterprise. I want to run that same software for my enterprise as on the edge. And the good news is there are the platforms to do that. And I'm standing on the orange dot there. You know which one I'm talking about as example. Right? You need to have a big data strategy. There's no way around that. If your competition has more data of their data, can make better decisions, you cannot catch up on that very quickly. If you're 2-3 years behind in the big data strategy to your key competitor, you're probably 2-3 years from going out of business. Same thing as with moving to the cloud. Right? The pandemic made it so clear to non-technical boards and investors how important the cloud is, because they saw other assets which were not flexible and scaling. Right? All of a sudden, like an Apple or an Salesforce looks at their headquarters where they put billions of money in and say, that's not really utilized well. Why did we spend all that money in there? So non-technical investors, board of directors members, get aware of that. Oh, that was the thing that the IT guys were talking about, the cloud, allowing them to change CapEx into OpEx. Yeah, and that's what you want to have. Your business scales up, you pay more for IT. Your business scales down, you pay less for IT. And then, of course, low-code, no-code, right? We talked about this. I think Matthias said the first time, you hear it again. There's not enough full-code developers. And we all know from building software, there's always a situation where things get lost in translation. The business wants this, and development builds this, right? Lots of funny slides for that, which hopefully we'll see later in the afternoon, right? The swing is the first time, the swing model, in case you've seen that. I should have put the swing in here. And to avoid this, nothing better than putting business users in the driver's seat. Yeah? It was really good to see the page approach this morning and the Neptune app builder, a visual way of programming. Anybody remembers visual programming from the 90s? Yeah, don't know why it never broke off, right? Why it never happened, but this is a step to go to visual programming. And I don't see the Neptune CEO, right? Because he promised me yesterday he will build an app in this page-like setup, right? So I want to call him out on that. Yeah, so super important. Lots of people talk about it. And then you build next-generation applications, right? Which take advantage of these things, are not limited in the finite world of running things in a specific place. And then there's an AI opportunity. I know there's a lot of fear, concern, but we're still at the very, very beginning of AI. And I personally am not concerned yet about this, right? As long as I'm at my gym, taking my siesta at the pool, trying to get my vitamin D production up, and I get targeted with banner ads to become a member of my gym while I'm at my gym on their Wi-Fi, you see that the advanced, I don't know where they put the ad, Facebook, Google processes still have a long way to go. Yeah. But this can change pretty quickly. Bill Gates said famously, right, we overestimate what happens in 1 year, we underestimate what happens in 10 years. If you go back to old presentations from 10 years ago, somebody told me they used it for partnership program showing the way how SAP worked with Microsoft 10 years ago. Super interesting. Go back to your 10-year slides and see what you're thinking about. Then ultimately, business model agility. Right, a competitor comes in, changes something, your software can scale and be agile. Maybe need some reconfiguration, ideally not. Just you have to ask different questions to your big data clusters. Your AI should pick up on that. And that creates resilience. Yeah. In summary, right, what it means is, you already talked about the speed of your enterprise must be faster than the speed in your markets, but it also means now that the platform that you're running on must be faster than your enterprise. Yeah, and this is why platform selection is super, super crucial. And that's why I'm also saying, because we have this inertia, we bought this platform, we run this platform, we have to stay on this, our developers know it, the business know it. No, don't stay on a platform if you need and sense that that platform is not going to give you the speed that your enterprise needs. Watch what your competitors are doing. Right? It's kind of like boring if everybody's on the same platform, but if they're on a platform that you think, we should have been on that one, or we could be on that one, and you see that they're pulling away from you, what you hear and see in the markets, look for platform change, which is very hard, but no question. But obviously, cloud readiness is super important. Yeah. Everybody has learned this through the pandemic. Right? There were 3 kinds of companies, right? The super busy ones, they had no time for that. The stutterers, which were on, off, close, on, off, they learned all about mainframe, not mainframe, I'll tell you a mainframe story in a second. They learned about cost of IT, right? Talking about mainframe, Delta, the US airline, one of the banner customers of the mainframe. Personally, I'm a big fan of the mainframe. You can build amazing things with modern software on it. And the mainframe was always great on TCO for Delta. Once the airline only flew 1/3 of that, the mainframe became 15% of IT cost. No longer effectively utilized. No longer a great story, right? Lots of light bulbs went up. How do I flex about my IT spend? And then, of course, AI readiness. Yeah, how ready are you for AI? I can only tell people who are worried about using it, not using it, don't miss out on it. Yeah, it's better to use AI and ask for forgiveness later. I know this might be ethically questionable, but if you think about one of my famous analogies, the famous Spanish conqueror Cortés, you know what he did when he reached South America? He burned the ships they came over with. Right? So there was no going back. And similarly on the AI side, there's no going back. Yeah, you have to do it right, you should do it ethically, no question, but you have to be ready for AI and then get to enterprise acceleration. So what I hope is, right, we came to the point that you understand software is eating the world. Yeah, your software capabilities, your ability to build software are crucial. And it's a fundamental change, right? Because in the past, standard software has won. We practically are in the same era of the first mainframe stage. But ironically, 2 Swedish CIOs back in the 90s told me, you know when you negotiate really hard with IBM for a mainframe, what you would get? In the 90s, it was clear you would get a discount on the hardware. In the 50s, you would get developer years for free. Yeah, because they didn't want to discount the mainframe, and they knew there's no standard software for the mainframe, so you had to write your own software. Now you know the history. Standard software came back for the enterprise. SAP has won. They built the widest suite. No question why they won, right? But now the best practices are not clear. So you're in a situation where you have to build software again, where you have to hire developers again, where you have to qualify your business people to build software. And this is why tools which allow you to do low-code, no-code are so crucial. Because ultimately, it's code that runs the world. If you believe in the software paradigm, your ability to write code, to maintain code, to operate code is crucial for your enterprise success. There's no way around it. And what enables that? Obviously, we're back to platforms, right? The platforms give you speed. Yeah, if that Neptune app builder works, it's going to be a much, much faster way to build applications for totally different kind of users. Right? Everybody can build PowerPoint. If the Neptune CEO next year at Neptune Inc. builds an app, then I think we're all convinced, right? It might be then dangerous, right? If CEOs are starting building apps, what could go wrong, right? So but we'll see that when we get there, right? The key thing is platforms enable ownership. Right, I mentioned this before, there was always this loss in translation, right? The users wanted this was in the spec, this was in the software, and this is what happened in reality. And at the moment you empower a business person, a business user, to look at software, right? I loved in the demo to see it live on my phone, right? Because I could have been in a different place with that URL. I could see right away what that is. It wasn't like a PowerPoint, screenshot, mock-up, wireframe thing, which for business users, again, something very, very abstract, right? There could be not paying attention, I'm distracted, doing other stuff, I have to deliver my business goals, I'm not here to design systems. But when you can see it, use it, very, very powerful. And what enables this is something analysts, I apologize, always have to come up with acronyms. So EAP stands for Enterprise Application Platforms, ways how to extend and build new software. So what do the EAPs do? They help you to battle, I use the lottery picture here, they help you to battle the business best practice uncertainty. You don't know how your business will run. It was great to see from Deloitte, modernizing financials, even the old boring financials areas thinking how to run things. Yeah? And it allows you 3 fundamental basics around that. And those 3 fundamental basics are to enable, trying to be funny here, it's hard for Germans, extensions. I'm working on extensions myself a little bit. Yeah. So extend software is very, very hard, right? Because the framework does not exist. The framework is cumbersome, it's tied to the legacy platform. If you have a low-code, no-code platform which allows you to extend your existing framework because something's missing, something you need, something to operate, very, very powerful. One of the oldest use cases there. Obviously then, the integration use case. Right? Find things, make them work together. Go across silos, right? That's where the RPA companies or someone like ServiceNow is doing really, really well of providing those silos together. But a low-code, no-code application, if you have to provide transactional or analytical capabilities across those different silos, can be very, very helpful to integrate as well. Yeah, don't think about the integration of putting file A to B, but think about business integration of bringing different back-end systems together. And then last but not least, you have to build. Right? There will be things that your standard software vendor, your SaaS provider will not build for you because they don't understand it, because you're a very peculiar business, because you're in a vertical which they will probably never get to, but will never admit that they will never get to it because they're busy with other stuff. So building is the most important thing for you to gain that extra speed, that extra business agility for your enterprise. We talked about this, there's not enough developers. My hope is that things like the app builder will allow that somehow techie business user will be able to build applications. Scary for many people, what could go wrong, right? We don't know if the CEO building them, but all the business people are building them, the departmental leaders. Nothing will work together, but I prefer to have that problem, that lots of people build applications, then you have to wait for an SAP, an Oracle, a Workday, an Info, whatever the ERP vendors are to deliver the automation that may be 80% right. So platforms allow you to own your automation destiny. Right? Your automation destiny, remember the picture doesn't come from your king who makes you the feudal person of using process in a certain way. You own it by yourself. So some recommendations. You have to decide on your automation focus. Right? Not everybody should do what Elon Musk did at Tesla. Not that he's a dumb guy, but he built all of ERP himself. Or not himself, right? His team built that. Right? So I don't think you should rebuild your whole ERP application, but you should look where is the differentiation? Where is the speed in your industry where you might be vulnerable or where you feel strong and you might want to overtake and attack your competition and stay relevant in your markets and thrive? Right? Decide on the automation focus. Pick, obviously, an EAP platform. I mentioned that before, an enterprise application platform. Don't be afraid to experiment. Yeah, generally in Europe, I live in the US, generally in Europe, European companies are not ready to experiment fast, but why not have 2 platforms at the beginning and see which one's working better for you? And remember, fail fast, right? Startup mantra some years ago. Don't be afraid of failing fast with these applications. Right? It's not like you bought a 5 or 10-year enterprise resource planning deal and you can't get off it or out of it easily. Right? These are easy, cheap to use, consume to use, with little effort applications. So remember to fail fast. And then last but not least, build. Right? Nobody's going to wait and have patience or I tell you, oh, don't worry, we didn't pick a low-code platform 3 years ago and now we're out of business. With that, here's my contact information. I hope I gave you 2-3 points which were interesting and new to you. Thank you for listening, and I'm 3 seconds over. Thank you very much.